I'm Paleozoic Bricks, and today we look at not one, not two, but three classic LEGO ships recreated for the modern era. From the farthest reaches of imagination, it's set 10497, Galaxy Explorer. It contains 1,219 pieces and is retailing for $100. So I ended up buying a total of 3 Galaxy Explorers. The other 2 helped me get the Blacktron gift of purchase. But the big question is, was it worth it in the end? Starting off with the minifigures, this set comes with 5 depending on what model you build. 2 red spacemen, 2 white spacemen, and a robot. The spacemen are the classic spacemen you know and love. Did you know that each color represents a class? White is explorers, red is pilots, yellow is scientists, blue is security, and black are spies. Black being spies, I always wondered what that meant. Are they Blacktron spies in classic space uniforms? Or are they spies for the Futron government meant to spy on Blacktron? And if you're wondering why there are no other colors besides red and white, the reason is they were not made yet, or in Yellow's case, they were not sold in traditional sets. Yellow was sold on blister cards. While LEGO does this today, it's still weird. Notably, the robot only features in 2 of the models, the Space Transport and the Galaxy Explorer itself. The robot featured in this set doesn't even come in the original Galaxy Explorer. The set it originally came out in was 6809 XT-5 Android. It's crazy to think that this robot came out a whole decade after the Galaxy Explorer came out. I'm unsure why LEGO chose this of all the classic space robots. I think it was less of it being an iconic piece of classic space history, and more of the fact it was a good fit for a gimmick later on. The first model we are going to be looking at is Space Transport, based on set 918. Naturally, the Space Transport is the smallest of the 3 builds. It's a great modern update of the classic ship. Like all the classic spaceships this set is based off of, this model is angular. The ship looks like it's built for speed. Being that this is a neoclassic space set, the colors are blue, gray, and trans yellow. Personally, I vastly prefer the earlier colors of classic space to the colors of the late 80s. Something about the trans blue and the white just didn't sit well with me, as compared to the earlier years. As the smallest of the builds, this ship is a one-seater. It has one of those cockpits where the pilot has to lay back to control the ship. Notably, the steering wheel has a really interesting construction in how it moves up and down for the pilot to get in. You can lift it up, seat the pilot, then plop it back down, and it's ready for takeoff. While it has the least detailed cockpit for the 3 models, it's still insanely detailed. One on each side, the pilot has a myriad of controls for flying this vessel. The antenna by the back of the ship is removable. Removing it reveals a control panel. Now, what might this control panel be used for, one might ask? For the robot included in this set to function like an astromech from Star Wars. I wonder what the function of the antenna is. In some way it feels like a futuristic engine with its trans-red bottom, almost like some sort of future energy source. But with the antenna I almost feel it's a big expensive radio so that they can transmit radio waves from one planet to the next. Moving back further on the ship, there's no cargo hold like on the larger ones, but containers on each side. On the top is a gray tail fin. The gray makes this one look odd due to the fact that all the other tail fins are blue. Then finally we have the immaculate thruster on the back. Looking at this thruster and the original one, it's crazy to see how LEGO has changed over the course of 40 years. The only thing is that this model doesn't have landing gear like the other models and even the original set. This version adds a lot more functionality, making it a very unique spaceship. In researching the older classic spaceships on Brickset, Bricklink, and the like, I found out about the confusing names of these sets. So for a while, LEGO, when releasing the sets in Europe and America, they could have different product numbers and names. So America got set 497 Galaxy Explorer, while Europe got set 928 Space Cruiser and Moonbase. Even the article on Brickset notes how cool the American name is. It's a name that just wants you to set out on an adventure in the stars, while Space Cruiser sounds mundane. To make this even more confusing, Brickset labels 928 as Galaxy Explorer along with 497, but flipping through a bunch of old catalogs tells a different story. They seem to consistently call it Space Cruiser and Moonbase. That even applies to the ones from the Netherlands. The name Space Cruiser would not go unused in America though. Set 487 would be given the name Space Cruiser in the American markets. But this time I prefer the European name, Set 924 Space Transporter. But Set 918 also seems to have a confusing naming scheme too. Brickset calls it Space Transport, but most catalogs from the time call it One-Man Spaceship. But it seems a lot of these names have been retroactively changed to suit a more popular name or fit a certain naming scheme. When I started looking at the older sets for reference, I noticed that the names of two of the smaller spacecraft didn't make any sense. The smaller one was called Space Transport, while the medium one was called Space Cruiser. The smaller one is clearly a cruiser, while the medium one is clearly a transport vessel. It even came with a Space Forklift. But seeing the European names, everything just clicks. The medium ship is a space transporter, designed for transporting cargo across the solar system. This was a very interesting rabbit hole to go down. It's strange how the most iconic name of the most iconic LEGO spaceship was only named that in America. The medium model is based off a Set 487, Space Cruiser, or the more common European numbering, 924. I say more common because 924 appears on the original model itself. The original and this version were designed for cargo more than anything else. It has less of an angular design than the other two. On the original model it seems to be due to part limitations at the time, but this version embraces the less angular construction. I originally didn't like the less angular construction due to it not fitting in with the other two spaceships, but now I feel I've really come to appreciate the more broad front. Understanding that it's a cargo ship and not a deep exploration ship helps immensely. This is the first of the three models we'll be looking at with landing gear. The original version of this model used 3940 support 2x2x2 stand. Plenty of spaceships use this piece from classic space to UFO. But we're no longer in the 20th century. Building techniques have changed. Where the old ones were not retractable, these can retract. Thanks to the Super Mario line, we got the main piece used for the landing gear. The only issue with the landing gear is that when you retract the foot piece, it can be pulled off the rest of the landing gear due to a lack of clutch power. But the fact that it retracts gives it a sense of being a premium item, something only reserved for special sets. Moving up to the cockpit, this build has my favorite of the three cockpits. It's the most detailed for the space given. Thanks to the wonderful prints in this set has no stickers. It has a total of 18 printed pieces. Many of them are wonderful control panels. I think what really sells it for me are the nozzles. It just adds a lot of detail. I don't have the slightest idea what they're used for, but all I know is that it adds to the cockpit's character. Hey, what's on the monitor? Why, some of the spacemen have found a TOA canister. But the LEGOLAND astronauts better be careful because on the radar, it looks like an incoming Blacktron cruiser. Whether or not it's aiming for the TOA canister or the space cruiser is unknown. Moving to the back of the ship, it has an opening cargo bay. It has a very interesting locking mechanism. At the moment, it cannot be opened up, but if you lift this Technic part, it's no longer locked and can be opened up. When we open it up, we can see a futuristic containment cell. Inside it has an extra oxygen tank so nobody loses oxygen. After removing the container, you can see a walkie-talkie and a wrench. Thanks to the way this model is constructed, it has a plate the container sits on with partial studs. It makes taking the cargo come out easy, but there's one problem. There's no Space Forklift. Thanks to VanderLegoFan, we have the much needed Space Forklift. I find this to be the best forklift because if you have this set, you can build this model. I put a link in the description and the pinned comment. Too many I find use rare forklift parts. This is perfect for me. Seeing how people were able to make this from spare parts from the model alone, I question why didn't LEGO make an official space forklift. I'm assuming because none of the other models have extra builds that can't be stored on the model itself. The cargo can be a bit big for the forklift, but with the right balance it will stay on. It's also built at the right height to mimic the original's play feature. It's great for a model that came from a limited part selection. The only problem is that it can be a bit fragile, but I guess it was made of spare parts and wasn't designed from the ground up. Naturally, I won't hold it up to the LEGO Group's standards in that sense. But being that it was geared for more adult collectors, there's no reason not to make the forklift. You already have the parts to build it anyway. Before we get on to the real reason anyone bought this set to begin with, I'd like to take a look at the instruction manual. It oozes with personality. The beginning of it gives a wealth of information on the history of this set and space at large. The first instruction manual that was interesting for me was the Ideas Blacksmith Shop, also again with Pirates of Barracuda Bay. The Lion Knight's castle is the exact same way too. I just hope with these special collector-oriented sets they keep doing this. I know that LEGO has been trying to make their instructions both more interesting for kids and somehow more boring. Looking at some of my newer LEGO Ninjago instructions, the covers are quite boring. This is apparently for visual consistency with the paper bags that LEGO has only used a handful of times. I just prefer the visual consistency with the box rather than the bags that will be thrown away when everything is all said and done. If you want to build the other models of this set, there are no physical instructions. They are all online. There is only one blurb saying that they exist in the instructions. Nowhere on the box it says that there are more models. The instructions for this set are thick, so having the others be online only makes sense. Realistically, no matter what you're building, the Galaxy Explorer is what you paid money for at the end of the day. Finally, we move on to the Galaxy Explorer itself. It is a colossal LEGO spaceship. Being the biggest, it shares many of its elements of its design with the smaller ships, like a more angular design and a hangar bay. The cockpit seats 4 LEGOLAND astronauts. Personally, I keep all 4 of the space travelers I got in the set in the cockpit. The cockpit is fine, but in the interior is where it really shines. In the middle of the ship there is a nice lab or even a control bay. Our little astronauts even have a place to sleep if they feel tired. Or if you get the Series 24 brown astronaut, it can also double as a cradle for the baby spaceman, which I might add is a great companion piece to this set. The rest of the lab is filled with all sorts of neat controls for the spacemen to monitor anything. They're even picking up the same signal of the other astronauts finding biomechanical alien life. I like how the floor is blue. I know this seems very small, but this feels very classic space inspired. It makes it feel like it's meant to be indoors compared to the black and gray of the hangar bays of this and the Space Cruiser. Now if we open up the hangar bay, there's a rover for the astronauts to explore the moon on. Now if we unlock this part, a ramp comes down for the rover to go and explore the farthest reaches of space. The hangar bay has been modernized for this set, instead of closing and locking based on a brick. Looking behind where the rover would be, there is one of the coolest parts of this set. It's a sliding airlock door. I just love how detailed the door is. I also love the detail of the plane windows. It adds a lot of character to this build. I love how the arrows on the side of the ship are done. They use Nexonite shield pieces and snot techniques to create it. While this set has a lot of printed parts, I'm glad the arrows are not a printed piece. Sometimes just creating a build out of bricks can be even more satisfying. This build is in the medium set too, but I wanted to talk about it here because this is the main model itself. If this is Nexonite's one claim to fame, I'm fine with this part being that claim. Just like the medium model, this has landing gear that opens up. The same issues apply here, but on the underside there's more detail with dish pieces. I assume there's some sort of thrusters of some kind. I love the design choice that the ship never feels like it's built on regular plates like the original. Thanks to modern building techniques, the Galaxy Explorer is really interesting in its construction of the gray part of the ship. I guess we can call it a foundation. Get it? Foundation, like Isaac Asimov's Foundation? While plates are used in its construction, it has more depth to it, making it much more of a detailed build, like how the 2x4 tiles are bordering around the entirety of the ship. The parts used inside of the hull of the Galaxy Explorer remind me of 70s and early 80s LEGO, more specifically something like the Magic Portal, in how the scenes in the spaceship use those types of colors, along with Technic beams and weird shaped pieces to make a visually interesting spaceship. Details like that go a long way in making a set feel more modern. Another good detail is how they did the thrusters. On the old set they used the old cone bricks, but today they are way more detailed. The clear red dishes mimic flames or showing some sort of energy thrusting the Galaxy Explorer into the unknown universe. This version adds a feature not in the original set. You can pop off the thrusters and it becomes a sort of rocket booster for the spacemen. While not in the original set, this feels like something from that era. In general, space sets were very modular. Everything came off to become a smaller vehicle. That modularity can be seen from classic space to life on Mars. The real question is it a space set if it's not modular to some degree? The size of the Galaxy Explorer is amazing. It takes the old set and truly makes it a modern collector-oriented version of the set. As many have said before me, it invokes the feeling of the original, but as an adult. Even the biggest space sets can feel small next to the modern Galaxy Explorer, but it should be noted that the Interstellar Starfighter has an incredibly small part count for its size. From my understanding, the Explorian Starship is the largest spaceship of that era. The 2022 Galaxy Explorer is one of the greatest LEGO sets of all time. Even with buying one, you still get the possibility to build 3 of LEGO's greatest spaceships. With this and many other sets being remade from LEGO's past, I'm optimistic to see what comes in the future. Sadly, we most likely won't see sets from M-Tron and Blacktron 2 due to it using trans neon green. But I'd be fine sticking to the grouping of Classic Space, Futron, Blacktron, and Space Police 1. It's probably a no-go for Futron given its similarities to Classic Space, plus the most iconic Futron set is the monorail, but I've always seen Futron astronauts as higher government officials or so. We already got a GWP Blacktron Cruiser or Invader if you're from America. Doesn't mean we can't get more like the Message Interceptor base. I think that's the best space base, not including the Rock Raiders base. Then there's Space Police 1. We need something to go against Blacktron. That color scheme also needs a second go with how striking it is. It seems LEGO will be making more classic-styled sets, so this is a good point to jump in on the LEGOLAND train. Yet again, I can't recommend this set enough to anyone really. I'm Paleozoic Bricks, and these are the adventures of LEGOLAND Space.